I got up in the morning with Colleen's arm around my waist. I wiggled from under her arm and headed out of my room. I walked towards the living room and saw Dad sitting in the same chair as my vision. And I started to look around for dead bodies. He looked at me with an eyebrow raised and said, "Well, you are acting strange today. What are you looking for?" I started to say and stopped myself and rubbed my neck before saying, "I am trying to find the earrings Nathaniel brought for me yesterday when he stopped by." He closed his eyes and asked when. My eyes widened in shock, and I immediately realized he knew about Nathaniel being in my room last night. I asked, "You know about last night?" He eyed me and said, "Yes, I do. I also know about him saving your life." I raised an eyebrow, let out a breath, and said, "So you heard about everything?" My dad smiled at me, nodded in the affirmative, and said, "He cares about you. However, at least you don't need to worry about Gabriel. Thank goodness your plan of action and mission seem to align with each other." I looked at him as if I wanted his opinion about how I should approach this mission. I said, "Well, you tell me what you want me to do, Dad, as this is your idea, and if you don't tell me or and me about certain things to keep in mind, you will have a dead son soon, because Ara thinks you want him dead." He laughed and said, "No, I want him to live. I want both of you to know him. So I have called his mother, and you will live with them for a month. It would give you ample time to get to know him, and you can't come back till then. Do you understand?" I eyed him as I asked, "Yes, but what about Colleen?" He glanced at me and said, "She's going with you and will get to know both boys. Remember, Shane and Nolan cannot get killed." My eyes widened as I asked, "Dad, what's going on? I feel scared. It's as if something bad is going to happen soon." Dad grinned at me and said, "Nothing, dear daughter. I am just anxious about the mission." I shrugged and said, "I am not sure if I trust you, Dad." His eyes hardened and he said, "Trust me, you will eventually be free from this life." I glanced downwards, realizing that something was fishy, and it was somehow related to the mission. I asked, "Is there going to be a rebellion?" Dad narrowed his eyes as if annoyed by my question and said, "Elena, you are too naive to understand everything. I am doing all this for you and Colleen. I lost 3 out of 6 of my kids. I am not going to lose any more of you." I glanced at him, my eyes narrowed as I watched him, and asked, "What if you die? Then we are going to be alone. He smiled and laughed as he said, "You don't give me enough credit. We have people willing to help us if we get killed." I clenched my jaw and said, "Dad, you can't." He leaned forward in his chair and said, "Yes, I can. Just do one thing and protect both your sister and your brother." Then he pulled out a vial of powder. I grabbed the powder from him. It had a blue tint and looked like a fine dust. I asked, "Is this the forget-me-not powder?" Dad smiled, nodded in the affirmative, and asked, "Do you know what it does?" I handed it back to him and said, "I know it erases memories. However, that's the only thing it does." He eyed me and said, "That's true, but their memories would return if they see the user again." He looked me in the eye and said, "If something bad happens, erase your brother's memories related to us." I looked at him and said, "Dad, you told me I needed to protect him. Wouldn't it defeat the sole purpose?" He laughed and said, "No, as it would be the last resort if everything got destroyed." I tried to calm myself down and said, "Dad, don't let the situation get worse." He let out a breath, pulled me into a hug, rubbed my back, and said, "I cannot count on Gabriel not harming you due to Nathaniel's fondness. You are supposed to be his betrothed someday, so you have nothing to worry about." I glanced downwards and shook my head in the negative. I said, "Dad, I have a lot of things to worry about." Then we heard a knock at the door. Dad walked towards the door and looked through the peephole and gasped before opening it. He stepped back in shock and asked, "Jacqueline, what are you doing here?" She replied, "Your wife texted me. He is targeting Nolan as well. He is getting braver by the minute, so I need a favor from you." He moved to the side and said, "You know you should not be here, Jacqueline, but come inside before someone notices you. What's the favor?" Jacqueline stepped inside and said, "I know she is leaving to go to Shane's house. I need your help in protecting Nolan. She can help me with it as well." He closed the door and asked, "How do you want her to help you?" Jacqueline crossed her arms, popped her hip to the side, and said, "Shane is his judo trainer. It would work." I stood up, looked at her, and rolled my eyes. I asked, "Why would I help a traitor? Nathaniel doesn't have a mother. I would protect Nolan, but not for you." She smiled, dropped her head, and said, "She is your daughter. Her thinking process is similar to yours. She looks like your wife. I wanted to meet you, but I had to run. My father looked at me, grabbed Jacqueline, and said, Jacqueline, you need to go before you get caught. She looked over at him and said, okay, take care, Elena. See you soon. Then Jacqueline walked out of the apartment. I walked to where I was sitting earlier and sat on the couch. I said, I'm calling him to tell him about starting the mission on Friday, right? He grinned slightly and nodded in the affirmative. I reached for the phone and called Gabriel. It rang a few times before he answered. Gabriel here. I let out a breath and said, it's Elena. He replied, yes, young lady. I closed my eyes and said, my mission starts on Friday. He said, all right, I will give you a month. I hung up and wondered, how am I going to do this mission? I am not too fond of this job, but I must protect my family.